God made us. He invented us. As a man invents an engine, a car is made to run on gasoline, and it won't run properly on anything else. Now, God designed the human machine to run on himself. He is the fuel our spirits were designed to burn, or the food our spirits were designed to feed on. There is no other. That is why it is no good asking God to make us happy in our own way, without bothering about religion. God cannot give us happiness and peace apart from himself, because it is not there. There is no such thing. This excerpt is from the book Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. God is attentive to every tear you have shed, to every silent plea you have made. He knows the depth of your suffering and the cries of your heart, and he is by your side, even when you feel most alone. Life can be extremely challenging at times. We all go through moments of exhaustion when our strength seems to fade and our spirits feel low. In these times, it is essential to remember that you are not alone. In Matthew 11, verse 28, it says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." At the height of our battles, it can be difficult to see the light. When the weight of our problems becomes unbearable, it is easy to feel lost and lonely. Lewis says in Mere Christianity that relying on God has to begin all over again every day, as if nothing had yet been done. But in these moments, it is vital to remember a powerful truth. God sees your pain and hears your cry. God's purpose will always prevail, and his timing is always perfect. Therefore, let us trust in his divine timing and purpose, as it says in Lamentations 3:25, 26, "The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." In 1 John 3, verse 20, we find that even when our hearts condemn us, God is greater than our hearts and knows everything. So before you lose hope, my dear brother and sister, remember that God is still reigning on his throne. He is Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah Shalom, and he is God with us. Do not lose hope yet. God is aware of your exhaustion. Just be patient and wait for him. At the right moment, the time determined by your Heavenly Father, you will receive your blessings. Today I will share some essential biblical teachings about waiting on God. So prepare your hearts and minds to embrace this message. One of the most challenging aspects of being a Christian is the patience required to wait for God to answer our prayers. Lewis says in Mere Christianity, "I am sure that God keeps no one waiting unless he sees that it is good for him to wait." Every Christian has experienced this waiting period where it seems that nothing is changing. We often question why God makes us wait. However, I want to assure you that God's timing is impeccable. He is a God of order and precision, as stated in Isaiah 46:10. "I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times. What is still to come, I say. My purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please." He calls a bird of prey from the east, a man for his purpose from a distant land. This theme is repeated multiple times in the Bible. One of the most daunting challenges in life is waiting, especially when it comes to waiting on God. Many of us can relate to this feeling. You've poured out your soul in prayer and wondered, "God, why is it taking so long? Are you listening to me? Have you forgotten me? Do you care?" Maybe you're praying for relief from chronic pain, or for God to touch the heart of someone you love. In Jeremiah 33, verse 3, it says, "Call to me, and I will answer you, and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know." Perhaps you are looking for a stable job to support your family, healing for deep emotional scars, restoration of a broken relationship, or the blessing of a life partner. Waiting can be hard, but remember, patience is a virtue. The more you pray, the more it seems there is no answer. You cling to faith and believe with all your heart, but there is no clear sign from God, no indication that He has heard you, no evidence that He is working. All you long for is a sign, any sign. Lord, show me something, anything. And yet, sometimes there is nothing but silence. So what is God doing in these moments? Why does He seem so quiet? Remember the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis. Joseph waited years, enduring betrayal by his brothers, slavery, and imprisonment. But through it all, God was with him, arranging every detail. In Genesis 50:20, Joseph reassured his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's journey teaches us that God's timing is impeccable, even when it is not apparent to us. Like Joseph, you may feel that you are trapped in a pit or a prison, waiting for deliverance. But let me reassure you that just because God seems silent, it does not mean He is not there. God is working, even while you wait. Behind the scenes, His goodness, power, provision, and grace are in motion. He is constantly working for your good because of His deep love for you. He is a loving Father with wonderful plans for you. He desires to bless you and see you thrive. So today we will discuss some principles about waiting patiently on God and open our hearts and minds to embrace these crucial principles from the Bible. And Principle 1, God's delays are not God's denials. Lewis says in Mere Christianity, "I am sure that God keeps no one waiting unless He sees that it is good for him to wait. When you get what you want, it is always either something better or something entirely different. What we call asking for God's answer is merely the beginning of the right direction. This is the first move, not the whole." In a world that values immediate results, waiting is often seen as a waste of time. We live in a dynamic, fast-paced society where we demand quick outcomes from technology because our time is precious. Waiting seems counterproductive, as if we are missing opportunities. This period of waiting can trigger anxiety and doubt. We may start to question if something is wrong because waiting contradicts our culture of instant gratification. It is challenging to wait when uncertainty looms over us, when we are unsure of the outcome. Doubt creeps in, and we begin to question if God will come through for us. As doubt takes root, the temptation to take control increases. But here lies the danger. When we try to control things ourselves during the waiting period, things can go very wrong. Scriptures warn us that trying to manage situations on our own can lead to complications. We see this in Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight." However, when we are waiting for what seems like an eternity, when our prayers seem unanswered and time continues to pass, we are tempted to take control. Perhaps you are at this point of desperation today. You have waited, prayed, and trusted, but nothing seems to change. Doubt whispers, "What if?" And before you know it, you are tempted to abandon God, to leave your faith because He did not meet your expectations. But let me ask this: how long does God have before you decide to leave Him? How long before you end your relationship with Him because He did not deliver on your terms? Remember, God operates on His own timeline, not ours. So in the midst of waiting, resist the temptation to take control. Trust in God's perfect timing, even when it seems like time is running out. Keep your faith. Hold on to hope and understand that God is always working, even during the waiting periods. Consider the story of Lazarus in John 11. Mary and Martha sent a message to Jesus that their brother Lazarus was sick, anticipating that Jesus would come and heal him. However, Jesus delayed his visit, resulting in Lazarus' death. When Jesus finally arrived, Mary and Martha were grieving and questioned why Jesus had not come sooner. But Jesus showed that God's delays are not denials. He performed a miraculous resurrection, demonstrating his power over death. Isaiah 55. 8 and 9 serves as a reminder, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." God's perspective surpasses our understanding. He sees the bigger picture and knows what is best for us. So when we encounter delays, let us not lose heart. Instead, let us place our trust in God's wisdom and impeccable timing. Let us have faith that He is orchestrating everything for our benefit, even when it is not visible to us. God's delays are not rejections. They are opportunities for us to strengthen our faith and witness His miraculous power unfolding in our lives. Principle 2. Patience is a virtue. Lewis says in Mere Christianity, "The great thing, if one can, is to stop regarding all the unpleasant things as interruptions of one's own or real life. The truth is, of course, that what one calls the interruptions are precisely one's real life, the life that God is sending day by day. What one calls one's real life is a phantom of one's own imagination. This at least is what I see at moments of insight, but it's hard to remember it all the time. In our lives there are times when it seems like God is delaying His response to our prayers. We pray passionately for healing, for provision, for breakthroughs, but it seems that God is silent. It is natural to feel disappointed, to question if God has forgotten us, or if our prayers are going unheard. Lewis says in Letters to Malcolm, "We must lay before Him what is in us, not what ought to be in us. The prayer preceding all prayers is, may it be the real I who speaks. May it be the real thou that I speak to." We must remember that God's delays are not a sign of His indifference or reluctance to act. Instead, they are opportunities for more significant miracles, for deeper faith, and for His glory to be revealed. Just as Jesus delayed His visit to Lazarus to show His power over death, God's delays in our lives often set the stage for something extraordinary. In a world that values speed and immediate gratification, patience can seem like a forgotten virtue. We are used to fast food, high-speed internet, and instant results. We want things to happen according to our schedule and our plans. However, the reality is that God's timing rarely matches our expectations. Patience is more than just waiting. It is about resilience, persistence, and faith. It is about maintaining hope when situations seem bleak and surrendering our desires to God's perfect plan. The Bible, in James 5, verses 7 and 8, instructs us, "Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near." This is similar to the farmer who waits patiently for the harvest. We are called to wait patiently for the fulfillment of God's promises. Patience is not a passive state. It is an active choice to trust in God's faithfulness, even when our circumstances are filled with uncertainty. Let's face the truth. Patience is challenging. It is hard when we are dealing with obstacles, when our prayers seem unanswered, and when it feels like time is slipping away. Doubt creeps in, and we are tempted to take control, but rushing God's timing only leads to frustration and disappointment. Instead, let us embrace patience as a virtue, knowing that it fosters resilience and shapes our character, as stated in Romans 5 verses 3 and 4. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. Let us trust in God's impeccable timing, knowing that He is orchestrating everything for our benefit, as Romans 8:28 declares, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. And let us remember that the waiting season is not a waste of time. It is a period of growth, refinement, and preparation for the blessings that God has planned for us. So, in the midst of waiting, let us cultivate patience, knowing that God is faithful and His promises will be fulfilled in His perfect timing. Principle 3. Have faith in God's impeccable timing. In the Screwtape Letters, Lewis says, "The enemy desires that men be concerned with what they do. Our business is to keep them thinking about what will happen to them. The future is, of all things, the least like eternity. It is the most completely temporal part of time, for the past is frozen and no longer flows, and the present is all lit up with eternal rays. Hence the encouragement to direct their minds to the future, making them think about things they can't control, leading to anxiety that can only be fought with faith." The Scriptures guide us to let patience have its perfect work. Patience is not a passive trait. It is cultivated in the waiting room of life. You may not notice any visible change, but rest assured that significant transformations are happening beneath the surface. Patience exercises your spiritual muscles, making you stronger, helping you grow, evolve, and become more resilient. So do not underestimate the waiting periods, and do not be disheartened if things are not progressing as quickly as you hoped. Remember, the longer it takes, the more blessings God has in store for you. When your time comes, when God knows you are ready, the fruits of your patience will be far greater than you could ever imagine. We all have aspirations we are eager to fulfill, challenges we hope to resolve, and the desire to meet the right person. But when our waiting seems longer than anticipated, it is natural to feel discouraged and restless, questioning, when will this finally happen? However, sometimes the delay is not due to God's inaction, but because we are not yet ready for what He has planned. You might feel prepared for what you imagine, but if you could glimpse God's vision, you would understand that you are not yet equipped to handle it. You need more time to mature, evolve, and gain experience. Let's revisit the story of Abraham and Sarah in Genesis 21. God made a promise to Abraham that he would become the father of many nations. However, Abraham was 100 years old, and Sarah was 90 when their son Isaac, the fulfillment of God's promise, was born. Imagine the weight of waiting for a promise for almost 100 years. But God, in His perfect timing, fulfilled His promise. In our lives, we often find ourselves in situations where we eagerly await God's intervention. We pray fervently for breakthroughs, for healing, for provision, for reconciliation. However, it seems that God's timing is different from ours. We may feel impatient, anxious, or even doubtful, questioning whether God hears our prayers or if He will act on our behalf. Think of the wait as a time of preparation, refinement, and growth. Just as Abraham and Sarah faced challenges and obstacles during their waiting period, God used that time to mold them into vessels ready for the fulfillment of His promise. So, my dear friends, let us root our hearts in trust. Let us believe that God is faithful to His word. that he is working behind the scenes, orchestrating every detail according to his perfect plan. Let us wait with anticipation, knowing that when the time is right, God will fulfill what he has promised. As we navigate through this season of waiting, let us cultivate a mindset of gratitude, praise, and worship, acknowledging God's goodness, his sovereignty, and his unwavering love. Indeed, Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6, offers us profound truth. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. This verse encourages us to surrender our timelines, desires, and understanding to God. It invites us to place our absolute trust in his sovereignty, wisdom, and faithfulness. Even when the situation seems bleak, our faith should persist in prayer, even when the answers are delayed, a faith that recognizes that God's ways and timing are superior to ours. His timing is always perfect. Principle 4. Discover tranquility in God's timing. Lewis says, "In the Screwtape Letters, men are not angered by mere misfortune, but by misfortunes conceived as injuries. And the sense of injury depends on the feeling that a legitimate claim has been denied. The more claims on life that your patient can be induced to make, the more often he will feel injured and, as a result, ill-tempered. For his mind can be directed to the present sphere of humility and quietness. Once he accepts this, he will find tranquility and a sense of peace." Psalm 46, verse 10, instructs us to be still and know that I am God. This verse highlights the importance of calming our hearts and minds, of pausing amid life's hustle to recognize God's presence and supreme dominion. In this stillness, we discover a peace that transcends understanding and guards our hearts against fear and doubt. Finding serenity in God's timing also involves appreciating the journey of waiting. Instead of perceiving waiting as a time of stagnation or frustration, it should be a time of reflection and deepening our connection with God. Finding tranquility in God's timing is a journey of surrendering control and trusting fully. It is about letting go of our need to control outcomes and embracing the certainty that God's timing is impeccable, even when it doesn't align with our expectations. Philippians 4, verses 6 and 7 offers comforting guidance. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This passage enlightens us that true peace does not come from having all the answers or controlling every situation. Instead, it comes from surrendering our worries and anxieties to God and finding rest in his supreme dominion. In a world filled with turbulence and unpredictability, finding tranquility in God's timing can be daunting. We may be tempted to worry, doubt, or try to control things on our own. However, genuine peace is achieved by surrendering our fears and anxieties to God and trusting that he is orchestrating everything for our benefit. As we wait with patience and anticipation, our faith is strengthened and our hearts are prepared to embrace the blessings God has planned for us. So let us embark on the journey of discovering tranquility in God's timing. Let us surrender our fears and worries to him, trusting that he is in control and that his timing is always impeccable. And let us find comfort in the assurance that while we wait with patience and anticipation, his peace will guard our hearts and minds, guiding us toward a deeper connection with him. Principle 5. Have faith in God's supreme dominion. Lewis speaks in Mere Christianity. Imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps, you can understand what he is doing. He is getting the drains right and stopping the leaks in the roof and so on. You knew that those jobs needed doing, and so you are not surprised. But presently, he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably and does not seem to make sense. What on earth is he up to? The explanation is that he is building quite a different house from the one you thought of, throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were going to be made into a decent little cottage, but he is building a palace. He intends to come and live in it himself. Proverbs 19 verse 21 clarifies that while a person may have many plans in their mind, it is God's purpose that will prevail. We can devise our own plans, but in the end, it is God's plan that stands. During periods of waiting and uncertainty, it is easy to question God's supreme dominion. We may wonder why certain events are happening, or why our prayers seem unanswered. But in these moments, we must remember that God's ways and thoughts are far superior to ours. We may not always understand his plans, but we can trust that he is orchestrating everything for our benefit. Trusting in God's supreme dominion also implies having faith in his perfect timing. It involves recognizing and yielding to his authority and control over everything. In a world filled with unpredictability and turbulence, placing our trust in God's supreme dominion can provide a sense of comfort and strength. Psalm 103, verse 19, serves as a potent reminder. The Lord has established his throne in heaven, and his kingdom rules over all. This verse powerfully underlines that God is in command, even when situations seem out of our control. His plans are superior, his ways are grander, and his purposes will triumph. Trusting in God's supreme dominion requires that we surrender our desires, our plans, and our will to him. It involves recognizing that he knows what is best for us, even when it is not visible to us. Just as Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11 assures us, he has made everything beautiful in its time. We must remember that God's timing is impeccable, even if it doesn't align with ours. We may become impatient and weary during the wait, but we can have faith that God is faithful to his promises, and his timing is always precise. So let us place our trust in God's supreme dominion, recognizing that he has control over everything. Let us surrender our plans and our will to him, and let us find comfort in knowing that he is orchestrating everything for our benefit. As Romans 8, verse 28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." So, my dear friends, take time to be still and listen to God's voice. In the silence of your heart, you will find your assurance. He is saying, "My child, I see your pain. I hear your cry. Trust in me, and I will carry you. Hold on, for the dawn is coming. Your perseverance will lead to victory, and your faith will be your guiding light. God knows you are tired, but he also knows you are capable of extraordinary things. Keep going. You are never alone. May divine strength and peace fill your heart and soul, guiding you through any challenges that may come. If this principle touched you, express your affirmation by typing "God is always with me" in the comment section below. I proclaim that all the blessings of this prayer are now granted to you in the name of Jesus. Thank you for joining me today. If you found this video meaningful, please like and share it with your friends and family. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell for more inspiring content. Have faith, maintain patience, and trust that God is working behind the scenes. Wait on God, for he is faithful. Your pain will not last forever, and your cries will not go unanswered. Trust in his plan, for he is preparing a future filled with hope and joy. God sees your pain and hears your cry. Hold on, for his promises are true, and his love is eternal, is eternal, is eternal, is eternal.
I am all in favor of your idea that we should go back to our old plan of having a more or less set subject, an agendum for our letters. When we were last separated, the correspondence languished for lack of it. How much better we did in our undergraduate days with our interminable letters on the Republic and classical meters, and what was then the new psychology. Nothing makes an absent friend so present as a disagreement. Prayer, which you suggest, is a subject that is a good deal in my mind. I mean private prayer. If you are thinking of corporate prayer, I won't play. There is no subject in the world, always excepting sport, on which I have less to say than liturgiology, and the almost nothing which I have to say may as well be disposed of in this letter. I think our business as laymen is to take what we are given and make the best of it. And I think we should find this a great deal easier if what we were given was always and everywhere the same. To judge from their practice, very few Anglican clergymen take this view. It looks as if they believe people can be lured to go to church by incessant brightenings, lightenings, lengthenings, abridgments, simplifications, and complications of the service. And it is probably true that a new keen vicar will usually be able to form within his parish a minority who are in favor of his innovations. The majority, I believe, never are. Those who remain, many give up church-going altogether, merely endure. Is this simply because the majority are hidebound? I think not. They have a good reason for their conservatism. Novelty, simply as such, can have only an entertainment value, and they don't go to church to be entertained. They go to use the service, or, if you prefer, to enact it. Every service is a structure of acts and words through which we receive a sacrament, or repent, or supplicate, or adore. And it enables us to do these things best. If you like, it works best when, through long familiarity, we don't have to think about it. As long as you notice and have to count the steps, you are not yet dancing, but only learning to dance. A good shoe is a shoe you don't notice. Good reading becomes possible when you need not consciously think about eyes, or light, or print, or spelling. The perfect church service would be one we were almost unaware of. Our attention would have been on God. But every novelty prevents this. It fixes our attention on the service itself, and thinking about worship is a different thing from worshiping. The important question about the Grail was, for what does it serve? 'Tis mad idolatry that makes the service greater than the God. A still worse thing may happen. Novelty may fix our attention, not even on the service, but on the celebrant. You know what I mean. Try as one may to exclude it, the question, what on earth is he up to now, will intrude. It lays one's devotion waste. There is really some excuse for the man who said, I wish they'd remember that the charge to Peter was feed my sheep, not try experiments on my rats, or even teach my performing dogs new tricks. Thus my whole liturgiological position really boils down to an entreaty for permanence and uniformity. I can make do with almost any kind of service whatever, if only it will stay put. But if each form is snatched away just when I am beginning to feel at home in it, then I can never make any progress in the art of worship. You give me no chance to acquire the trained habit, habito dell'arte. It may well be that some variations, which seem to me merely matters of taste, really involve grave doctrinal differences, but surely not all. For if grave doctrinal differences are really as numerous as variations in practice, then we shall have to conclude that no such thing as the Church of England exists. And anyway, the liturgical fidget is not a purely Anglican phenomenon. I have heard Roman Catholics complain of it too. And that brings me back to my starting point. The business of us laymen is simply to endure and make the best of it. Any tendency to a passionate preference for one type of service must be regarded simply as a temptation. Partisan churchmanships are my bête noire. And if we avoid them, may we not possibly perform a very useful function? The shepherds go off, everyone to his own way, and vanish over diverse points of the horizon. If the sheep huddle patiently together and go on bleating, might they finally recall the shepherds? Haven't English victories sometimes been won by the rank and file in spite of the generals? As to the words of the service, liturgy in the narrower sense, the question is rather different. If you have a vernacular liturgy, you must have a changing liturgy. Otherwise, it will finally be vernacular only in name. The ideal of timeless English is sheer nonsense. No living language can be timeless. You might as well ask for a motionless river. I think it would have been best, if it were possible, that necessary change should have occurred gradually, and, to most people, imperceptibly, here a little and there a little, one obsolete word replaced in a century, like the gradual change of spelling in successive editions of Shakespeare. As things are, we must reconcile ourselves, if we can also reconcile government, to a new book. If we were, I thank my stars I'm not, in a position to give its authors advice, would you have any advice to give them? Mine could hardly go beyond unhelpful cautions. Take care. It is so easy to break eggs without making omelettes. Already our liturgy is one of the very few remaining elements of unity in our hideously divided church. The good to be done by revision needs to be very great and very certain before we throw that away. Can you imagine any new book which will not be a source of new schism? Most of those who press for revision seem to wish that it should serve two purposes, that of modernizing the language in the interests of intelligibility and that of doctrinal improvement. Of the two operations, each painful and each dangerous to be carried out at the same time, will the patent survive? What are the agreed doctrines which are to be embodied in the new book, and how long will agreement on them continue? I ask with trepidation, because I read a man the other day who seemed to wish that everything in the old book which was inconsistent with orthodox Freudianism should be deleted. For whom are we to cater in revising the language? A country parson I know asked his sexton what he understood by indifferently in the phrase truly and indifferently administer justice. The man replied, "It means making no difference between one chap and another." "And what would it mean if it said impartially?" asked the parson. "Don't know. Never heard of it," said the sexton. "Here, you see, we have a change intended to make things easier. But it does so neither for the educated, who understand indifferently already, nor for the wholly uneducated who don't understand impartially. It helps only some middle area of the congregation, which may not even be a majority. Let us hope the revisers will prepare for their work by a prolonged empirical study of popular speech as it actually is, not as we, a priori, assume it to be. How many scholars know, what I discovered by accident, that when uneducated people say impersonal, they sometimes mean incorporeal? What of expressions which are archaic but not unintelligible? Be ye lift up. I find that people react to archaism most diversely. It antagonizes some, makes what is said unreal. To others, not necessarily more learned, it is highly numinous and a real aid to devotion. We can't please both. I know there must be change. But is this the right moment? Two signs of the right moment occur to me. One would be a unity among us which enabled the Church, not some momentarily triumphant party, to speak through the new work with a united voice. The other would be the manifest presence, somewhere in the Church, of the specifically literary talent needed for composing a good prayer. Prose needs to be not only very good, but very good in a very special way. If it is to stand up to reiterated reading aloud. Cranmer may have his defects as a theologian, as a stylist. He can play all the moderns and many of his predecessors off the field. I don't see either sign at the moment. Yet, we all want to be tinkering. Even I would gladly see, let your light so shine before men, removed from the offertory. It sounds, in that context, so like an exhortation to do our alms, that they may be seen by men. I'd meant to follow up what you say about Rose Macaulay's letters, but that must wait till next week. Why, you say that my view of church services is man-centered and too concerned with mere edification. How does this follow from anything I said? Actually, my ideas about the sacrament would probably be called magical by a good many modern theologians. Surely the more fully one believes that a strictly supernatural event takes place, the less one can attach any great importance to the dress, gestures, and position of the priest. I agree with you that he is there not only to edify the people, but to glorify God. But how can a man glorify God by placing obstacles in the way of the people? Especially if the slightest element of clerical one-upmanship, I owe the phrase to a cleric, underlies some of his eccentricities. How right is that passage in the Imitation where the celebrant is told, consult not your own devotion, but the edification of your flock. I've forgotten how the Latin runs. Now, about the Rose Macaulay letters. Like you, I was staggered by this continual search for more and more prayers. If she were merely collecting them as objet d'art, I could understand it. She was a born collector. But I get the impression that she collected them in order to use them, that her whole prayer life depended on what we may call ready-made prayers, prayers written by other people. But though, like you, staggered, I was not like you, repelled. One reason is that I had, and you hadn't, the luck to meet her. Make no mistake, she was the right sort, one of the most fully civilized people I ever knew. The other reason, as I have so often told you, is that you are a bigot. Broaden your mind, Malcolm, broaden your mind. It takes all sorts to make a world, or a church. This may be even truer of a church. If grace perfects nature, it must expand all our natures into the full richness of the diversity which God intended when he made them, and heaven will display far more variety than hell. One fold doesn't mean one pool. Cultivated roses and daffodils are no more alike than wild roses and daffodils. What pleased me most about a Greek Orthodox Mass I once attended was that there seemed to be no prescribed behavior for the congregation. Some stood, some knelt, some sat, some walked. One crawled about the floor like a caterpillar. And the beauty of it was that nobody took the slightest notice of what anyone else was doing. I wish we Anglicans would follow their example. One meets people who are perturbed because someone in the next pew does or does not cross himself. They oughtn't even to have seen, let alone censured. Who art thou that judgest another's servant? I don't doubt, then, that Rose Macaulay's method was the right one for her. It wouldn't be for me any more than for you. All the same, I am not quite such a purist in this matter as I used to be. For many years after my conversion, I never used any ready-made forms except the Lord's Prayer. In fact, I tried to pray without words at all, not to verbalize the mental acts. Even in praying for others, I believe I tended to avoid their names and substituted mental images of them. I still think the prayer without words is the best, if one can really achieve it. But I now see that in trying to make it my daily bread, I was counting on a greater mental and spiritual strength than I really have. To pray successfully without words, one needs to be at the top of one's form. Otherwise, the mental acts become merely imaginative or emotional acts, and a fabricated emotion is a miserable affair. When the golden moments come, when God enables one really to pray without words, who but a fool would reject the gift? But he does not give it, anyway, not to me, day in, day out. My mistake was what Pascal, if I remember rightly, calls error of stoicism, thinking we can do always what we can do sometimes. And this, you see, makes the choice between ready-made prayers and one's own words rather less important for me than it apparently is for you. For me, words are, in any case, secondary. They are only an anchor, or, shall I say, they are the movements of a conductor's baton, not the music. They serve to canalize the worship or penitence or petition which might without them, such are our minds, spread into wide and shallow puddles. It does not matter very much who first put them together. If they are our own words, they will soon, by unavoidable repetition, harden into a formula. If they are someone else's, we shall continually pour into them our own meaning. At present, for one's practice changes, and I think ought to change, I find it best to make my own words the staple, but introduce a modicum of the ready-made. Writing to you, I need not stress the importance of the homemade staple. As Solomon said at the dedication of the temple, each man who prays knows the plague of his own heart, also the comforts of his own heart. No other creature is identical with me, no other situation identical with mine. Indeed, I myself and my situation are in continual change. A ready-made form can't serve for my intercourse with God any more than it could serve for my intercourse with you. This is obvious. Perhaps I shan't find it so easy to persuade you that the ready-made modicum has also its use. For me, I mean, I'm not suggesting rules for anyone else in the whole world. First, it keeps me in touch with sound doctrine. Left to oneself, one could easily slide away from the faith once given into a phantom called my religion. Secondly, it reminds me what things I ought to ask, perhaps especially when I am praying for other people. The crisis of the present moment, like the nearest telegraph post, will always loom largest. Isn't there a danger that our great permanent objective
Sometimes a hollow follow is a hard bit to swallow. I'm a domino just falling for treads in the deep, and it's on me and it's pulling me in. Oh, 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 Geronimo. Oh, 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 Geronimo. Oh, oh. My mind was always in to be the guy who has your back. I crescendo and bail my heart out on every track. I need bubbles and things, and we need you, we want you here. I worry every single night that this dreamland will disappear. I need you here. Oh, 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 I need you here. I dream of tomorrow, dear. I need you now. Our team is forever here in the deep end. It's so neat and it's pulling me in. Oh, 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 Geronimo. Oh, 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 calling out, it's a desperate shout. Can you hear me clear? When the spotlight fades and the cheers die down, will you still be near? I'm chasing fame in a paper plane. Can't you see it's true? But the wind's so strong and it feels so wrong when I'm without you. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, oh, oh. I'm without you. But if I fall, will you catch me at all? When the curtain's drawn and the echoes are gone, who'll stand tall? I'm reaching out, It's a final call. Can you be the light in this fleeting world where the shadows swirl? Will you hold me tight? My motto's always been to be the guy who has your back. I crescendo and wail my heart out on every track. I need bravos and thanks, and we need you, we want you here. I worry every single night that this dreamland will disappear. I need you here. Oh, oh, oh. I need you here. I'm holding on to the edge of